In healthcare, and frankly in all business that occurs internationally, the metric system is standard. Now we can look at several different types of units that we measure. If we're looking at length, the standard unit is the meter, which is about a yard, and the symbol that we use for meter is M. If we are looking at mass or weight, the standard unit in the metric system for one unit is the gram. We use the letter G. But if this thing that we use most often in science is a kilogram, which is 1,000 grams, but we'll talk about that. If we're looking at volume, what we use here is we use a liter. And the symbol we use there is L for gram. It's G-R-A-M, of course. And if we're looking at temperature, we use degrees Celsius. Which we write this way. So these are the standard units. In healthcare, certain of these units are more important than others. Now, we have our multiplier. Each multiplier is going to have a name. And then we'll look at what those will be for length, for mass, and for volume. And these multipliers don't really work for us in the context of temperature. But if we have one unit, we don't give it a name. One unit for length is 1 meter. 1 unit for mass is 1 gram. 1 unit for volume is 1 liter. But if we have 10, the term that we use is deca. Now, frankly, that's not used very much, so we're not going to concern ourselves with it. 100 hecto is what's used. And again, we don't use those a whole lot. Now, for deca, according to your textbook, they're saying dA. So they're saying dA is a decameter, dA is a decagram, dA is a decaliter. Frankly, I'm not sure that's right, but it doesn't matter since practically it's never used. For hecto, we use the letter H, so you can say hectometer, very rarely used. Hectogram, never have seen it used. Hectoliter. But 1,000 is used. For 1,000, we use kilo. So we have a kilometer, km, stands for 1,000 meters. A kilogram, hopefully that's something you recognize, is 1,000 grams. That's used often. A kiloliter, no, you're not going to use a kiloliter very often, but that's what it would be if that were to come into play. Now if we have 1/10, 1/10, that's deci. So you'll notice deci and deca both start with the same letter. So that gives us a bit of a challenge. So you could say a decimeter, very rarely used. Decigram, never seen it used. Deciliter, never see it used. 0.01, which is 1/100th. The name of that is centi. That starts with C, so we use the first letter C. A centimeter, I'm sure that's something that you've seen before. A centigram, occasionally used. A centiliter, again, I don't think that's used very often. And then we have 1/1000th. 1/1000th, and that's milli. So a thousandth of a meter is a millimeter. I'm sure you've seen that before. A thousandth of a gram is a milligram, and a thousandth of a liter is a milliliter. So which ones of these things are actually used? Kilometer is used, centimeter is used, millimeter is used, a kilogram is used, milligram is used, and a milliliter are used. So those are the ones that are used most often. And there's one more that I want to add, and that is a multiplier of 1/1,000,000th. 1/1,000,000. Or 0.00001. And that's micro. And the symbol we use for that is micrometer or micrometer. You may have heard that before. Microgram, that symbol is a Greek letter mu. Microliter. That may be important in certain areas in healthcare, especially in fields like nuclear medicine where they use such small dosages. The textbook says when you are writing units in the metric system, use decimals rather than fractions. So instead of writing 3/4 of a gram, not what we want to do, they're suggesting that you write 0.75 gram. And they also say do not put a space between the last number and the G. And that sort of makes some sense because you don't want people putting other numbers in. For example, if you had 2 milligrams with a space, who knows if somebody could accidentally squeeze a number in there. Maybe an addict might want to get a larger dosage of some medication and might squeeze a 0 in there. So for the sake of charting, I think it makes a lot of sense to go ahead and write the units directly after the number. And of course we want to make sure that we know how to do charting. So let's take a look at an example for that. If we say 2 1/2 milliliters 3 times a day, half HALF milliliters 3 times a day, using the rules established by this textbook, 2 1/2, we're not going to write with mixed numbers, we'll write with a decimal. So we'll say 2.15, and then we'll write milliliters directly after it. And I frankly prefer to write milliliters as small m, capital L. The textbook likes to go with small m, small l. And then 3 times a day, we'll check our chart. 3 times a day, of course, is TID. And let's do one more of those. What if we say 1/2 gram every 4 hours? So we'll go with 1/2 written as a decimal. 0.5 gram, write the G right next to it. And every 4 hours, checking our information there. Every 4 hours is Q dot 4H. Will correspond to 1/2 gram every 4 hours.